Okay. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I've interacted with all of you guys in some form or fashion, mostly over email, but my name is Jessica Vaith, and I am the clinical coordinator here at CCU. So my main role is to work with all of our students as they're going into practicum and internship, and really preparing them early on in their program, doing orientations with them, and just making sure that they really understand what this process looks like. Because as you guys know, this is just a really big part of the students' program. It's usually the part of the program that creates the most anxiety for our students. And so just really working with them early on, making sure they know what they need to be doing, and then helping them kind of along that process as they're submitting paperwork and getting everything approved before they start their practicum. And so I think the majority, if not all of you guys on this call today, are probably working with practicum students. Some of you might have interns students as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about both. But I want to just kind of highlight some important things that will hopefully help you guys during this process. We just really appreciate everything you guys do, so we want to make sure you have as much information as you can. So we're going to just jump right in. You probably have heard or at least seen on the forms that you filled out. Our forms are titled Professional Practice because KCREP refers to this entire experience that our students are going through as the professional practice experience. And so since we are a KCREP accredited program, that's how we refer to this as well. So professional practice is going to include the practicum and the internship experience. And so this is where our students are, actually out in the field, applying the skills and the knowledge that they've learned with real clients under your supervision. Just real quick, I just like to touch on this because this is a KCREP requirement, and because I know I get a lot of questions from supervisors throughout the time our students are with you guys. If somebody else could supervise them for a time being, or maybe you're going to be out or whatnot, and what are those supervisor qualifications? So it's important for you guys to know this is what we're looking for when we're approving a supervisor. So KCREP is they're clear as mud, really, when it comes to these things. So there's a little bit of room for interpretation. They do require all of our site supervisors to have a master's degree, preferably in counseling, but a related profession. So we kind of determine that. That's why we ask for your guys' resumes. They do have to have relevant license. So since we are an online program and an in-seat program, we have students across the states, and we have some outside of the states as well. So the supervisors have to have whatever that relevant counseling license is in their state. And then it says a minimum of 2 years of pertinent professional experience in the specialty area in which the student is enrolled. So all the way through this cohort of students, we have just interpreted that as the supervisor needs 2 years of experience in counseling to have obtained their license. So we were always looking kind of at what does the state require for an LPC in this state or an LCSW in this state, and we kind of look at those requirements, and they had to have at least done at least 2 years of experience to obtain that license. However, that requirement is changing. So for you supervisors who are with us, year after year, just so you're aware, with our brand new students who just came in and will be doing practicum next fall, this requirement is now going to be that the supervisor needs to have had 2 years of counseling experience post-licensure. And so part of the reason we're doing that is because state to state, there's not a consistent requirement for supervisors. And so that's kind of this baseline that we're going to go off of from now on. Obviously, supervisors need to have knowledge of the program, expectations, requirements, and evaluation procedures, which is why we're doing this today, making sure you guys just know everything you need to know about the program and what your part in this is for the students. And then you have to have relevant training in counseling supervision. So that's why we've required you guys to watch a supervisor training video. Even if you have, extensive training, this is just something we're requiring for every supervisor. So hopefully you guys have had a chance to watch that video already. If not, We all ask that you do that before this coming Monday. And it's just I think it's like 16 or 17 minutes long. So we tried to make it very succinct for you guys because we know you have a lot on your plates already. So yeah, and then we are required to do orientation, which is what we're doing today. And then we offer webinars and other trainings throughout the year. So these aren't required for you guys. We just want to try to offer things for you, just as a way to kind of give back because you guys give so much to our students. So we usually try to have a webinar every spring and fall. So we don't have the dates specifically yet for this fall's webinar, but once I have those, I'll send those out to you right away. So practicum, like I said, most of your students are probably in practicum right now. So the way our program works at CCU, we have a cohort sequence that we follow. And so our students always start their cohort in the fall. We might have a few students who do some electives before that, but the majority of our students are starting in the fall semester. And they start taking their core classes, and they will do then practicum the following fall. So for the first 3 semesters of their program, just so you guys kind of know, they're doing what we call their gatekeeping classes. Practicum and internship is also gatekeeping, but these classes that they're doing in those first 3 semesters are really, really important and vital to whether or not we think students are ready to move on to practicum. And so they're going to be doing lots of different role play where they're just going to have a lot of eyes on them by their faculty. And then we're evaluating them throughout those classes as well. They get the majority of their core classes done. They do still take classes during practicum and internship, but it does slow down significantly. And so that's important. And I just like to make note of that because we really value those first 3 semesters in watching our students to make sure that they're ready to go when it comes to practicum the following fall. So for example, we just had a brand new cohort start, 2 weeks ago. And so those students are in, their first classes. And after this first semester, the entire faculty and staff will meet and they will go over all the evaluations that they had done in their Skills 1 class. And we will just talk about them and just hear feedback from everybody and just make sure after that first semester that our students are good to go. And if there's any concerns, then we make note of those right away and we start to work with any of those students that we have any sort of concerns with. So we're really trying to be very proactive with our students so that we make sure that they are good to go when it comes to their practicum in the fall. So once they get to practicum, this is kind of the general requirements here on the screen. So students are required to collect 100 hours in this first semester of their professional practice experience. So our semesters are about 14 weeks. The reason I say about is because we do have breaks here and there. So fall semester is a little bit longer because, for example, last week was Labor Day break. So they were off. They didn't have classes during that week. And then Thanksgiving will be another week where they won't have classes. So the whole semester goes for, I think, about 16 weeks long. And so during that time, they're required to collect 100 hours of direct and indirect hours. And those are broken up 40-60. So students are required in their practicum to collect 40 direct hours. Those are those clinical contact hours. So KCREP kind of defines those as, that could be individual, marriage, family counseling, that can be group counseling, that could be intake, case consultations. So anything where they're really working with the client can be counted as direct. So we have a few kind of specifications and limits where we limit students' hours. For example, we allow them to count up to 25 hours of teaching as direct or up to 25 hours of phone counseling as direct. But we put some limits on things. I think it's 25 hours of milieu counseling. But otherwise, when it comes to direct hours, besides, those guidelines that KCREP gives us, which are in the student's manual, we really just entrust you guys as site supervisors to, figure those things out with your student. Obviously, if you have questions about something, you can contact us, but you guys are out in the field, and I think you guys have really good senses of what would be direct and indirect. So, we tell the students, if you have questions, ask your supervisor. And if you guys are still not sure, then come back to us and we'll help you discern what would be direct. Out of those direct hours, one thing I just want to make sure I touch base on is those audio and video recordings. So you guys should already know that this is a requirement for our students. They are required to do, this says 1 or 2. I think they have changed it in their class to just 1. So every semester, students have to do 1 audio or video recording of a real client session. And so we ask students to try to do the video first. And if that's not a possibility, to then try to do the audio. And then still, if that's not a possibility, we do allow a live observation. We much prefer the audio and video recording. I'm sure all of you, many of you, if not all of you, have recorded yourself doing counseling during some sort of program. We just find it to be really valuable for students to be able to watch themselves back. But we understand that some sites don't allow that, and maybe clients aren't comfortable with that. So the live observation is a possibility if needed. So that would be where you as a site supervisor would have to sit in on the session and observe the student doing the counseling, and then you'll do an evaluation of the student from there. So that is an option for the student. That live observation form is going to be updated and changed probably in the next semester. So you'll use the current one. The student will provide that to you. But just so you know, we're going to be updating that. So I actually would welcome any feedback you guys have on that form. If you are going to be using it, I would welcome any feedback, because we're going to be taking some time to update that later in the semester. Oops, so sorry. So then out of the rest of the students' hours, they are indirect. So it's a minimum of 40 hours. If students get more direct hours, that's less indirect hours they need. They just need a total of 100. But the indirect hours come really easy for students, I think, especially here in practicum, because you guys are having them do lots of trainings and observing, and they're just learning a lot. And so I think they collect these indirect hours pretty quickly. And these can come from just a variety of different ways. They could be, case notes, treatment planning, group supervisions, any type of training and orientation you guys have them doing. All of that counts towards their indirect hours. They also count all their supervision. So they're required to do 14 hours of individual or triadic, which would be 2 students to 1 supervisor. They're required to do 14 of those hours every semester with you as their supervisor. So usually supervisors just do that weekly with their students. And all of those hours count towards the indirect hour requirement. Students are also counting all their class time. So they're meeting every week for an hour and a half with their practicum class and their faculty member. Even our online students are doing this. This is synchronous. They're doing this online with their faculty member in their class. They're logged in for an hour and a half together. And so that acts like a group supervision for the student. That's where they would be presenting their video or audio or live observation case. They do like an extensive case conceptualization when they do that. So they present that, and it acts just like group supervision for the student. So all of that time gets counted towards their indirect hours. So like I said, these hours, I think, accumulate pretty quickly for students. So moving on, just quickly and briefly, I'll go over this for you guys, because most of you will be with our students through internship. So students, they have to complete internship in a minimum of 2 semesters. So a lot of you guys probably wrote up a contract with a student for their entire practicum and internship. I got lots of contracts that go from like August to August, which would be the practicum and 2 semesters of internship. And then I got a bunch of contracts also that came in from like August to December of the following year. And that's just because some of our students will have to do internship in 3 semesters, depending on their schedule and what you can offer them. So students can kind of pick and choose what works for them. If they're working full time, they probably need to do internship in 3 semesters. but it is a requirement of a minimum of 2. So in that minimum of 2 semesters, students are required to collect 600 hours. And so these are broken up very similar, kind of a 40-60 split. So it's a minimum of 240 direct client hours, and then the remainder of those are indirect. It does say on this slide that they need at least 10 hours of leading or co-leading a counseling group. That is true, but that can happen in practicum or internship. So students are required to do that at some point during their professional practice experience. And they can have more than 10 hours. It's just, that's the requirement. And then site supervision stays the same. So those 14 hours every semester. And I get lots of questions from students and supervisors about how those hours need to be kind of allocated. For example, somebody will ask, my site supervisor's out on vacation for a week. Can I double up 1 week to make sure I get my hours? And that's totally fine. I really trust you guys to figure out what works best for you and your student. We just really want students to be in supervision consistently throughout the semester. And we want them to be, in supervision as much as they need per the amount of clients that they have, so the requirement is 14. And that, like I said, works out usually to be in supervision weekly. But we know that sometimes students need to add a half hour on here and a half hour on there because a site supervisor's out or a student's out, and that's totally fine. So I've already gone through this, but this is directly from KCREP. This is how they define direct and indirect. So you can see kind of the examples that they give, for direct could be assessment and counseling, different psychoed activities, and consultation with clients. So I always tell students, you might be working with a kiddo in counseling, but then you'll consult with their parents for 30 minutes after a session or something, and all of that counts. And then indirect hours come from just a variety of ways. So you guys have all signed contracts with your students. We take this contract really seriously with our students and our supervisors. We tell them, the students, this might not be like a legal document, but it's definitely a professional and ethical document that we really want you to take seriously. So we ask our students to honor their contract. If they wrote up a contract with you, for 3 semesters, then we expect them to be with you for 3 semesters. Now, there's always some sort of exception. There's always something, that comes up, whether it's a student has something personally going on that makes them have to break a contract, or, if, this doesn't happen very often, but if there's something going on at the site and it's just not a good fit, and they need to break a contract, or the site supervisor needs to break a contract, then we have discussions around that, and we have a process around that as well. So we just have a form that we would ask you and the student to fill out that just kind of covers all these different bases, like there's a termination plan with clients, and here's the last date that the student's going to be there, and the supervisor signing off on that. So we want to make sure we have that in place as well, because like I said, we take the contract really seriously. The relationship that we have with our sites is really important to us. And so we want the students to honor that as much as they can. If there's ever a change in site supervision for students, then that would be a reason to have a new contract. So if you're going to have to step out for some reason, and the student is going to have a new supervisor, then the student needs a new contract with that supervisor, and that supervisor needs to be vetted through CCU just like you were. And then also if the student is just going to be adding a second supervisor, that happens a lot too, where sites just want to have 2 different supervisors for the student, then we need to have a contract for that person as well. So again, I've already kind of gone over this, but I'll just reiterate. So supervision with students, we allow triadic supervision to count towards their individual supervision requirement. If there's more than 2 students in the supervision meeting, then it cannot count towards the individual supervision requirement. The student can still count that towards their indirect hours. It's kind of then just a group supervision hour, and students are welcome to count that. That's kind of extra then. But students do have to have 14 hours of individual or triadic. So we like I said, you guys will be evaluating students. So if you're a new supervisor with us and you have not seen the CCSR yet, it's the Counselor Competency Scale revised. But if you've been with us before, then you're probably really familiar with this evaluation tool already. This evaluation tool is what we use on students throughout their entire program. So like I said to you guys before, students are doing skills classes, like they do a skills 1 class their first semester, and then they're evaluated with this evaluation tool. And then any other time they have a skills class or some sort of role play class, they're going to be evaluated with this tool. So it's consistent through their entire program, and then we ask that you evaluate them with this tool in practicum and in internship. So students can kind of watch their progress. So I will pull this up. Well, actually, I'm going to open time to track in a second, and I'll pull it up that way. Because if I pull up the PDF, it just looks different than it does in time to track, and I don't want that to be confusing. So the way this scale is written is on a 1 to 5 scale. And so we tell students, you know, we wouldn't expect you to be rated at 5s. And in fact, if you were rated everything was a 5, that would probably be a little, just not concerning, but we would be like, huh, that's interesting. They're getting perfect scores on everything. You know, these students are still learning. So we know that they're not going to be rated at a 5, but we also don't want them to be rated at a 1. If they're being rated at 1 and 2, because I think that's kind of like harmful, then we're going to be concerned and wanting to talk to you and make sure that everything is good and that the student isn't needing more support. So you're going to be filling this out on your students twice a semester. You'll do it mid-semester and end of semester. And it all comes through time to track, which I am going to open up for us at the end of the presentation. And so, yeah, we ask that you do that mid-semester and end of semester, and that you go through it with the student. So it's not something that the student never sees. It's very interactive. We want you to take some time during supervision, go over it with the student, talk to them about any concerns you have or areas of growth that you're seeing, highlight their strengths for them. And then students actually turn this in their class. And I think mid-semester they like write a journal, like a reflection journal as an assignment, and they talk about the CCSR and their scores and their time with their supervisor. And then at the end of the semester they submit it as well, and we keep those on file then. Okay, so time to track. Hopefully you guys have all been into time to track by this point. But time to track is the program that we use to track all of our students' hours. So as a site supervisor, you get an account. It's free. There's no charge. And this is where you will be approving or denying students' hours. So students are responsible for their hours ultimately. They're the ones that are responsible for tracking them, making sure they're getting logged, making sure they're getting logged correctly, submitting them off to approval for you. But then site supervisors are responsible for approving all of their hours. So this does include students' class time, which I know sometimes that seems a little weird that you would be approving a student's class time. But the way time to track works is it's just set up so it's a placement. And so everything goes through that placement. And so students get approval from their supervisor, but then they get verification from their faculty. So faculty are the second set of eyes. They're just like reviewing all the students' hours, seeing that you've approved them, and then they're just going to verify them. So if a faculty member notices that a student wasn't in class, but they logged that they were, then they would reject that hour. There is a new feature in time to track where faculty members are allowed to approve and verify hours. So we have one faculty member, Dr. Wiggins, who's kind of testing that out for us. So if she is your student's faculty member, then you might see her approving and verifying class time. So she's kind of testing that for us. Time to track is so great, but it's also, there's always these little flaws in it. And so we're just always trying to figure out the best way to make this work and the easiest way for you, students and faculty members. So what we have found right now is by having the site supervisor approve everything is really the cleanest way. So what we really try to encourage with Time to Track is we try to encourage our students to be logging hours, as they're doing them. So daily, if that's daily, whenever they, collect hours, they should be logging them that day. And then we try to really encourage site supervisors, if you guys could just get in once a week and approve those hours, that would be really the most effective way to do this, so that it's not like backing up on you. So really, I would just encourage you guys, when you're in site supervision with your student, just maybe for the first 5 minutes, pull up Time to Track, pull up the student's hours, review them with the student, and then just approve them. And then that kind of is happening weekly. And then that also gives our faculty members an opportunity to go in and verify weekly. So let me pull up Time to Track really quick for you guys. I won't go over this in too much detail. And then what I will just say is, if you guys have questions or, need a more extensive demo, to let me know, because I'm happy to just do like a one-on-one demo with you guys and go through kind of the ins and outs of Time to Track. And I can kind of show you what the student sees, and that might be helpful for you as well. Okay, so here's Time to Track. I'm going to switch roles right now because I'm in my account and it looks very different. Okay, so this is what it should look like for you guys as a supervisor. You should see just 3 little tabs up here: the Approvals tab, the Forms tab, and the Students tab. Now, I will note, if you're new to Time to Track and you're a new supervisor for us, then this Forms tab might not be there yet. This might not appear until you actually get a form in your account. So you might just have the Approvals and Students for now. So it's pretty simple. There's not a ton of things you can do in Time to Track, which I think is nice, because there's really only 2 things that we need you to do. We need you to approve students' hours, and then we're going to need you to do evaluations for them, which is where the Forms tab comes into place. So students, if they have set up their placement correctly in Time to Track, which they have been given, instructions on how to do that, so hopefully they all have, then what they do is they log these hours and they attach them to a placement. If they don't attach it to their placement, then there's no way for them to send it off for approval, which means you'll never see them. And so if students are like, I've been logging hours, I don't know why you can't see them, one thing you might just check is, well, did you send them to me for approval? Because students actually have to do that. That's an active step that they need to do. And if they're like, there's no hours in there for approval, then that's a good indication they may not have attached them to a placement. So I don't expect you guys to troubleshoot all this with them. You feel free to do what you can with them, but then you can just send them back to us for Time to Track stuff. And I've been working with students already who are trying to figure it out here at the beginning of the semester. So we try to catch everything as early on as we can, so that we don't have major issues later on. But so once students have done everything, they will log their hours and then they send them to approval for you. Once they do that, then they show up under your Approvals tab. So you'll see on my account, like, just a various amount of hours here from different demos that I've done. But this is what it will start looking like for you guys. Let me just see. Here we go. So take a look at these ones here that have the black submitted status. This is what it will start to look like for you guys. If you haven't already seen this, like, shortly you're going to be seeing your students submitting hours, and it'll just be a list of their hours they've submitted to you, and the status will say submitted. So this means you have something to do. If it just says submitted, then that means you need to do something here, because you'll see these other ones up here, like say approved. That means the supervisor has approved them. And then when it's got this yellow status here that says verified, that means the faculty member has verified them. You can also reject them if you need to. So when you see hours sitting there that say submitted, that means, okay, I need to go in there and take a look at these and do something about them. So you can click on them individually. If students are just submitting hours like for approval once a week, then you'll get like one approval request that will have various things under it. So if you look at this one, this is a total of 4 hours. This was one request that was sent over, but it's indirect clinical observation, it's site individual supervision, and it's individual counseling. If students log one thing at a time and send things over one at a time, then you're just gonna have like a list of different things to approve. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. And honestly, I would just say for you as a supervisor, sit down with your student and talk about what works best for you. You know, whatever you want to do is fine with us, whatever feels easiest and cleanest for you. I will say when students submit them in a block like this, you can only approve or reject the entire thing. So for example, if you are like, yep, this clinical observation looks fine. I know that they did that. I know that they saw this client. That's great. But we didn't do supervision on September 1st. You can't just like go and approve this and reject this one. You have to reject the whole thing. And then you would just like make a note here, you know, I need to reject this because we didn't do site individual supervision on this day. So please resubmit. So that's like the only downfall I would say about students submitting them in a big block like this. But let me go back in. It definitely does just make it, I think, a little easier for you guys in the sense that you can just approve all things at one time. So I would say most of the time what you're going to be doing is looking through this quickly and saying, yep, this all looks good. I have no concerns about any of this. And then you're just going to be hitting approve. You don't have to make a note unless you want to. I would say really if you're rejecting something, that's a good time to make a note, but otherwise you can just approve. So now you'll see this status changed over here as approved. So as a site supervisor, that is your role, like your main role when it comes to time to track and their hours. The other thing you'll be doing, like I said, is doing their evaluations, and those will show up under the forms tab. So when we're about like week 5 of the semester is when I will send out forms through time to track. So you'll see emails coming through from time to track. When your students send you approvals, when I'm sending you something, you're going to start seeing those come through. Everybody is different on how they like to do this. For me personally, that just like all those, you know, emails coming through from time to track, just to me feels, it's just like, looks like junk mail to me. So I don't like to respond via email. I just like get rid of those emails, and I would prefer to just log straight into my time to track account, you know, weekly, and just take a look that way. But if the email works for you, you can use it, you can utilize that as well. So about week 5, I'll send out the forms to you because students have to turn them in at the end of week 7. So that gives you about 3 weeks to get this done. And then at the end of semester, I'll do that same thing. About 3 weeks prior, I'll send you guys your evaluation forms. And I'll just open up one really quick so you can see. You won't have quite as many as I do in my account, but this is what will happen. You'll click on the forms tab and they'll show up here when you have a form to fill out. So if you have multiple students from CCU, you know, you'll have multiple of them sitting here. But you'll see what the form is called. So this one from a demo that I did is called Spring 2019 End of Semester CCSR. So you'll just click Start Form. And this is what the counselor competency scale revised looks like on time to track. So it gives you your guidelines. And so you kind of know when you're rating them, you know, what a 5 means. And that means it exceeds expectations, and so on, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then you're going to be evaluating them in 2 parts. Part 1 is counseling skills and therapeutic conditions. So you'll just go through and read, you know, what it is. So this is nonverbal skills. And then you'll just rate them. And that goes all the way through here. And then part 2 is counseling dispositions and behaviors. And then the final part of this evaluation is just some feedback. So we just ask that you take some time to do some short answer here and to give some feedback on your student. And then you do need to date it, and you sign it electronically. And then you'll complete the supervisor step. Once you do that, then the form will appear in the student's account. And if you just save it, the student won't see it. You'll just have it here. But once you complete your step, it submits and it goes to the student's account. So then the student can see it, and you'll see here the student has a place where they actually need to sign it and date it as well for this to be fully complete. So this is the only form that you'll need to fill out on Time to Track, and like I said, you'll do it twice a semester. And then students have other forms that they fill out on here as well. So that is Time to Track, kind of a quick demo of that. And like I said, if there's more questions and you want to go through it one-on-one, please just let me know. Quickly here, I just wanted to let you know, so who should you be contacting if you have questions? So if students have a faculty member every semester, and that person changes. So your students who are enrolled in practicum class right now each have a faculty member. You should have already gotten like a introduction email from that person, because we're technically in week 2 of the semester, even though we've been in it for 3 weeks since last week was a break. You should have heard from your faculty member by now introducing themselves. So if you haven't, please let me know. But that person will also be reaching out to you every 2 weeks, just a quick check-in. This isn't meant to be overwhelming. This is really just meant to keep those lines of communication open for you so that you do know who to go to if you have any questions or concerns with your student in particular. So when it really is about like your specific student, hey, this is coming up, or I'm seeing this, or I'm concerned about this, or maybe you actually want to sing their praises, that's awesome too. We love that. You can contact that student's faculty member. But you can always contact me. I can always be a point of contact for you. And if it's something more specific that needs to go to the faculty, then I can direct you as well. I also have a clinical administrative assistant. Her name is Christy Hawley. And she's going to be a great point of contact, if I'm out of the office or something. But she in particular is our Time to Track person. So like I said, if you have questions about Time to Track and you want to do a demo, I'm happy to do it with you. Christy can do it with you. But throughout your semester, if you're just running into issues with Time to Track, she's going to be a great resource for you. But this doesn't need to be confusing. I can always be, like I said, your point of contact, and then I can direct you if needed. Like I said before, we do have webinars usually in the fall and spring. So there will be some information coming to you soon about our fall site supervisor webinar. So I'll be sending that out, and we'd love for you to attend that. Otherwise, that is all I have for you, and I'd love to open it up for questions. If you guys have any questions, you can feel free to just unmute yourself, and we can answer any questions you might have.
Hey, Jessica, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Joe.
Hey, my question is more with regards to the live observation or video recording.
Okay.
That goes on. Is there a certain time that has to be completed by? Is it based on professor or just trying to figure out if it's something we can do later in their practicum so that they have enough time and training to be comfortable to do that?
Sure. That's a great question. Yeah. So, it varies. So the way it is set up, I think students start getting information about this assignment early on, like maybe it's week 3 or 4, but then the students sign up for a week. So there's 12 students in every class. And then, so students they just pick a week. And so, you might have like 2 students from CCU, and 1 student might be going, week 4, week 5, and then another one might be going week 8 or week 9. So it just depends. And students try to kind of pick weeks also based on their site. So some students might say, hey, I got a caseload my first week, I can go right away. And others might say, we're building up slowly, so can I go later in the semester?
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. You guys are always welcome to contact me if questions come up. Hopefully, you received the email, you were copied on an email when the students got their final approval. And in that final approval to the student, they were getting their signed contract, a copy of that, and they were also getting the manual attached. so the professional practice manual. So I copied you guys in on that so that you would have a copy of that manual as well. So please feel free to always, refer to that if you need to. But don't hesitate to pick up the phone or to email me if you have questions as well. We really want to just make sure you feel supported along the way. I did get a quick question on the chat that is just asking what the actual end date for the first semester is, and what the policy is for holidays. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So the end date, I don't want to say it wrong, it's December 15th or 14th. December 15th is the end date for this fall semester. And students are on a holiday break. This is the only time that break gets a little wonky. So students are on a winter break. They go back. Spring semester starts January 6th. This is the only break that students are not allowed to count hours because they're not technically in a class. So this is state by state. This varies. So this isn't a blanket statement, but we tell students at CCU, you're allowed to continue to see clients during that break if you would like, but you need to check with your state to make sure that's okay, that you would be seeing clients without being enrolled in a class. And then you as site supervisors need to know students are not under supervision at CCU during that time. So for example, in the state of Colorado, they can continue to see clients. We tell our students, if you're going to do that, you need to be registered with DORA. But every state's different. So we really preach to our students, you're responsible to check your state's mental health statutes. So they can't count those hours though during that time, unfortunately. So that's just kind of the caveat, is that's just extra hours that they would be doing. But we understand that sometimes that's needed for client care. So hopefully that answered your question. Another question came through. If a student is sitting in a counseling session with a therapist, can this be counted as direct service if consultation is done with therapists following the session? So observation cannot be counted towards direct hours. If it's strictly observation, then it's indirect. But if they are interacting in the counseling session and having some sort of active role, then they could count that as direct. And then group work, how many hours qualify for direct hours? As long as it's psychoed or counseling group work, and the student is facilitating or co-facilitating, they can count all those hours towards direct. They just need a minimum of 10, but they can have more than that. Question, if I have another therapist sit with student, does this therapist have to sign off on time to track? No. You as a supervisor are the only one that needs to do that. If there's another supervisor that is supervising the student, then we would want them to also have time to track and have a contract on file. But if you just have another therapist with them, then that's fine. They don't need to be on time to track. Good questions. Great. Anything else? Okay. Cool. I appreciate you guys taking time to join me today. I know you guys are really busy and you have a lot on your plates, so I do appreciate you guys just taking this time. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Okay. Have a great day.